Hello and welcome. It's Alexa Linton here, your host for the Whole Horse Podcast. We're here to look at all the ways that the horse industry is changing before our very eyes in very cool, very amazing ways. And we're chatting with the people at the forefront of that change, the professionals, the trainers, the body workers, the researchers that are helping our lives with horses become better and better. Thanks for being here. I love that you're here and listening and learning. And if you ever have a guest that you want to suggest or a topic that you want to hear, just let me know, and I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening. It means a lot, and I look forward to seeing you for season 4. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you're back on the Whole Horse Podcast. And today on the podcast, I have one of my favorite guests back on the podcast. I know you'll all be very excited. It's also one of your favorite guests. Josh Nichol is here today. Thank you for being here, Josh.
Oh, glad to be back. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and visit.
Aww. It's so great because we're recording on this app where I can see Josh right now, and it's just really wonderful to have a friend back in recording with me. And and I know we had a good chat before we started, and it's it's been quite a time as of late for I think so many people, and I know for you, Josh, you've gone through a lot just in the last 24 hours here.
Yeah.
And so I just, like I said before, I want to extend my thanks that you feel good being here and sharing this space with us today. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I'd love to open it up to you. Sort of, I think everybody who's listening has heard your story on some level or another, and has a sense of where you're coming from with your work. But I know that right now there's other things on your heart, and it's up to you how much you want to share or what's going on for you. But we're happy to go where you want to go here today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess just a little bit about kind of where we're at, but we've had a mare that has been degrading in her health, and we've done our best to prolong and help her stay happy and sound, but got to a point where her soundness became more of an issue and her health was failing, so we had to end up putting her down. And we had that planned around yesterday, and had the vet come out and take care of that. And she was really at peace with the whole process. It was really very sad, but it was a very clean passing for her. Um, and At the same time, I have my old dog Jake, who has he's 16 now, and he is probably the best border collie I've ever owned. He's taught me more about cattle and about collies than I would have ever learned in a lifetime, just by getting to a place where I got out of his way more and allowed him to show me how they feel space and how they work, and ways to engage cattle in a way where it's not just pushing, but it's understanding them. And Yeah, the beauty of him, uh, he would he would in many scenarios know what needed to happen, and he would find some crazy way to get it done that was totally outside of my scope. And I got to a place where I would just allow him time to kind of think it through and figure things out. So he just taught me so much. But anyways, I had to have the vet come and look at him yesterday. Just wasn't sure about kind of where he was at. He's been feeling off lately, and when the vet saw him, she was soberingly informative of his condition, and his heart was starting to. He had a lot of fluid developing around his heart, and she believed that it was time, because it wasn't to a place where he was really in a dramatic amount of pain, but I could tell he was definitely changing, and she felt like it was a very responsible thing to do it yesterday. So then we ended up putting him down as well. So that was a challenging day. to take care of one of my best horses. Um, that mare, wow, helped my daughter learn to ride,
Mm,
and my wife barrel raced on her for a while, and she was just such a sweet mare. Um, and but man, so amazing how death is so different to them.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
because she knew what was going on, she knew exactly what was happening, and we where we did it, we did it in the field so the other horses could
Yep.
be a part of it.
Good.
And Max is like just the wisest horse ever, and he's been with Zoo right from when I first got her. I got Zoo, she was a kind of a trauma scenario, and I got her from a lady who just couldn't handle her anymore, and she had been abused in a training scenario. And she was in her early 20s, so I got her when she was 3, I think.
Mm,
Anyway, so Max and her had been close their whole life. And just so interesting to watch him. And he came in, and he was a part of the experience. And then once that was all sorted out, he kind of stood off a little bit. And then Cindy stayed with Zoo. And then when I left, Max came right to Cindy and just stood with his head kind of on her shoulder. And then he would go back and forth from Cindy's shoulder to Zoo, and then just stood there, like a big monument.
mm,
And it's just amazing to watch the calmness. And that was I was telling you earlier that I do
mm,
feel, as much as there's emotion, I feel a sense of calmness at the center of it all. And I think that came from the rest of the animals.
mm-hmm.
This sense of peace, that they're all so connected, not to the emotion of it, but to the okayness of it.
Yeah.
And what they needed is they just needed to be a part of it. um, and that was pretty amazing. And I feel
Mm,
like Max's steadiness really assisted Cindy and assisted me. And he just held space, and then he would kind of sniff her, then he would go off and eat a bit, and then he would come back. um,
yeah.
and then yeah, then we went and got Jake, and said our goodbyes. And he was so okay. That was, I think, the hardest. It wasn't hard, but it how do I say, it brought a great level of peace, but it all happened very quickly. So I think the hardness of it was that it was kind of like, it was very quick. um but he was just okay. He just knew it was time. And I had shared with you earlier that I felt like for Jake that I've made the statement many times that I've wanted him to mentor my next main dog. And it's taken me a few years to kind of find a dog that I really connect with. And I don't look for the same connection as I had with Jake. I don't believe that's even a thing. I think each relationship is so unique. um but this dog that I have now, her name is Kate, and she is the next dog of mine. Like, she is a heart dog for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted him to be able to raise her and bring her up on cattle. And when the vet sedated Jake, and then she looked at his heart again, there was other things going on that she could then see. And she said she couldn't actually believe that he was alive. And
Mm-hmm.
it made me really appreciate the impact of our words and our thoughts around how I put it out there so heavily that I wanted him to raise Kate. So I took that pretty serious, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that, and he did an amazing job with her, just teaching her. And some of the things I loved about him is that um, he was so thoughtful with cattle. He would do, if he had to take a hold and bite something, he would, but he hardly ever needed to. He was good with pairs. He didn't make cows defensive, and that
Mm-hmm.
was always a really great quality, because a lot of times dogs can be hard with
Yeah.
cows when they have their calves, because it's the cows get defensive.
Yeah.
And Jake just had this ability of just moving in this calm way of getting things done. And he actually taught Kate that. It was nice to watch that, because she would come
Yeah.
in a little bit more zealous. And he just kind of showed her. Anyways, there were so many ways that he
Mm.
showed her. And so he did that. He did it. And I don't know how long he was holding that idea that I wanted him to do that. And it's so interesting, you don't always don't I don't really know the elements of how intentionally that goes energetically, that he could hear that and understand that. And then did he prolong his life because of that? Or maybe it's just fluke. I don't know. It's just so
Hmm.
many possibilities, I guess, but it seems very apparent that just by what the vet was saying too about his condition, that was a serious deal, and he definitely could have gone previous to this. So I'm very glad that
Mm.
we brought the vet down and then faced those hard things. And then when we were dealing with Jake, we brought the other dogs up, his our family dogs and Kate,
Yep.
um, and just let them be a part of it.
Yep.
And it's just amazing the peace they have, or the stillness they have in it all. And I feel like I did my best to allow the emotion to move, and I feel
Hmm.
like that's really important, especially for guys. There's something about
Yep.
trying to not necessarily, or trying to be tough or something, but I really felt that I was able to be there and just wept with him at the end, because
Yeah.
he means so much to me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Whew.
yeah, and then yeah, we just when she gave him the sedative, he was so happy. He just sat there with me, and he's not an affectionate dog. Never was. Like, he wouldn't. If he came and talked to you for 30 seconds or 20 seconds, that was huge. He would mostly just come and sit by me, and he's a working dog, and he just laid there with me.
Mm.
And then yeah, it was very peaceful,
Yeah.
but not easy.
Not easy.
And then waking up this morning, it's just it's an interesting energy, because I go and let the dogs out in the morning there, and he's not there, and
Hmm.
but the space feels very vibrant because he's not trapped in that painful body anymore.
Yep.
So yeah,
Mm.
kind of a liberating feeling, a peaceful feeling. Um, but all that's left right now is just to process
Yeah.
the sadness of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you for sharing. And I felt as we went along, I felt them both in this space of like,
Mm,
oh,
mm,
he's telling the story. Like there was
mm,
this real appreciation of
mm,
having that story shared about what those
mm,
what they meant to you,
mhm,
and what they continue to mean to you. And I could really just sense that so much,
mm,
because I don't think we talk about it
mhm,
really. Like, I think like you said about animals, it's so weirdly natural for them.
mm,
Death, dying. There's a there's this beauty of how in the process they are. Just,
mhm.
like this is the next step. This
Yeah.
is the next step. And for us as humans, it's very, we resist it. I don't want to think about that. I hope that never comes, or
Mhm,
we sort of push it off. And yeah, I'm so glad that you listened yesterday, that you were able to be still and present.
mhm,
When I so anybody out there, I wrote a book called Death Sucks, like 5 years ago. It's all about final transitions, and
mhm,
working with our pets' final transition. The name is questionable, but it's a good book if
mhm,
you need some help. But that one of the things I talk about in there is the steadiness that are is one of the things that our animals want the most from us at that
mhm,
time. And you talked at the beginning about this sense of that you've been practicing stillness, like
mhm,
that has been the space that you've been in. Like, what
Mm,
better preparation for
mhm,
this moment than that?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, really interesting actually because I felt that there was a part of me that was very still, and I felt connected to Max and the dogs, that I was on the same frequency, and then I was able to experience my emotions and just process that and not try to pretend that stillness didn't allow me to feel it.
Yep.
Um, and it also allowed me to hear that how important it was for me to be a part of the entire process,
Yep.
right up to, bearing them and taking care of everything. I felt like that was all, it was all, I had to do it all.
Yep.
And I felt very compelled to every piece of it. Um,
Mm.
and that was all part of the process. I don't know whether it's that they wanted that or if I it was just for me, but um, and yeah, there was this interesting stillness even involved in the emotion, which was in moments overwhelming. Um, and it's been a real interesting thing to just experience that you can have. It's good to have the emotions. That's
Yeah.
that's part of the story. It's part of the process. Um, but the emotions don't have to become my center,
Yeah.
I guess is what I mean.
Yes.
They don't have to be the center of my presence, that you can experience that and yet still be somewhat grounded, I guess. I'm
Yes.
not really sure how to explain it, but because that's what the animals were showing me, is that
Yeah.
they were very grounded, and they don't have the same emotional things that we have, or the same way, I guess, but they were all very grounded in it, and there was such a lesson in that. Um, but that doesn't then mean that our emotional moments are negative.
No.
So it's just about being able to honor each of the pieces, I guess, and go through the process. I think the biggest thing that I find, that I always wonder, and you wonder that about yourself in the moment, is, am I going to um, retain his life for my own selfishness?
Mm.
Or in the moment, are you going to be able to make the call, the hard one, because it's more about what they need in those moments than it is about what we need. Um, so I was happy that in that moment I was able to make that call, which I guess you just, you hope that you'll always do the right thing, but that's a real thing for people. You hear about
Oh
that all the
yeah.
time. When is the time? It's a real big deal. When is the time? Because it's like, okay, well, it always seems like the vets can give you things to make things better or to make them more comfortable, but when is the time? And I feel like intuitively, when we get quiet, we'll know those things. Maybe if we're too much in our emotions, in our feelings for our dog or our animal, maybe it's harder to read that.
Mm. Yeah. I have an entire chapter dedicated just to timing.
Wow.
Because it's, yeah, to be in that space of, because the fear takes over, right? The fear
Hmm.
takes over, and it's like, oh my gosh, what if I end their life too soon, or what if I didn't do it soon enough, or what if I,
Hmm.
what if this, what if that? All of that, comes in and can knock us from that center, can knock us from that connection.
Hmm.
And I know for myself, the most profound, when my pups passed, my one little girl, Kia, she was a little Pomeranian firecracker.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, passed of a heart condition as well.
Mm.
And in the December, she had an episode where I thought I was going to lose her,
Mm.
and I just remember. I think I'd been really numb before that. Like, I think
Mm.
I'd just been like, oh, no, I'll be fine, you
Hmm.
know. And that moment when I thought she was going, I realized I'm not ready. Like,
Mm.
I'm just the it's like the connection fully came online at that
Hmm.
point, and the love and uh and then thankfully she was like, "Oh, just kidding." And she lived another 4 months after that.
Mm.
Um and I look back and I was so grateful for that moment where she kind
Mhm,
of shook me up and went, "Hey, just so you know, like, I'm getting ready. Like,
mhm,
this is coming. You need to
mhm.
prepare yourself."
Yeah.
that was so critical for me because I was
Mm,
in the numbness of it,
mhm,
and I wouldn't have been able to hold the space that was necessary
mhm,
for her.
mm,
And so that sense of the center and the sense of just that they will tell you the
mhm,
timing,
mhm,
just like Jake did yesterday, where that
mhm,
smile on his face and that sense of release that you felt.
mhm,
And even when you shared that just a little bit of the euthanasia and he was gone,
mhm,
that's a real indication. He's like, oh, I'm ready to fly. I'm
mhm,
ready to go. And
mhm,
it's so beautiful that you followed that, you know, that with him and just
mhm,
stayed in the sense of connection and stayed in the sense of what does he need
mhm.
at this time.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say that about that kind of like 4 month warning or whatever, because that happened with Jake as well. It's just crazy. I'm not sure how long ago it was, but it must have been this spring, I guess,
Yeah.
because Cindy and I were just sitting on the deck. We just have coffee on the deck, and sun comes up, and it's just a nice morning, and he came, and all of a sudden, it just hit me that I don't know if he was kind of walking around across the yard, and just the way he was walking, it was almost as if for a moment he kind of looked lost, and he had that real old looking dog kind of walk.
Mhm.
And he would have moments when he would do that, but it was just quick, so it never really made me feel like we were kind of caught or right there. But it hit me right there, and I actually started to weep right there,
Yeah.
just because I was like, holy smokes, this is happening. He's always been there. He's always, and that's the other thing. It's a funny piece, but he's always been there, and I feel like he has been a little bit of my identity, because I love working cattle with dogs. I love
Yeah.
it. And he has always been able to get the job done in an amazing way. And I've always said that I don't know how people work cattle without dogs, because one guy with a dog is worth five riders, and if you're in the trees, probably more than that, because
Yeah.
they can just get in places. Um, and it was like there was this other release of it being like, no, he didn't. I don't even know how to say it, but I just felt like there was another piece to it, because Max has a similar thing. Max and I have been through so much. Just I've cowboyed full time on him. I've picked up at rodeos. We've done every single thing I've ever tried. Max has always been a part of it, and he holds such depth and wisdom. And Jake was a little bit about like that in dog form. So then kind of feeling like, wow, kind of like, well, who am I without him? There was like that question that came to my mind, and it's like I had to process that,
Yeah.
and I was processing that until now, and I
Yeah.
didn't actually recognize that I had processed that, because that made it more about me, and this wasn't about me. This is about him, and so it kind of gave me time
Mhm.
to kind of process that piece, that he's been a huge gift to me, and we've been able to be two beings, um, interacting, but it wasn't for me to hold on to him when the time was right.
Mhm.
And I think you're right. It's like some kind of thing just breaks in you, and it causes you to really take another level of appreciation to the time you have, and that also creates a little bit of a snap about never losing the appreciation for every moment of life. Um, I have this saying that I like about that: every moment is like an accordion, and a lot of people will pass by moments like the accordion compressed, and they never slow down and embrace that moment. And when they do, the accordion opens, and the richness of each moment is, the fullness of it in so many ways is there. And I feel like that happened, by that, is that it really gave me this
Mm.
wake up call, or even more so of, wow, this is happening.
Mm.
And It's pretty funny, because just in the last month, 2 months, I guess, this spring, I took him out to work cattle, and he was totally deaf. Like, he couldn't even hear. So I don't even know what I was thinking. It was very much so just following a feel, because we wouldn't be able to communicate, but I knew the the jobs we were doing, he would be able to just kind of do his thing, and he watched me lots, and it was really amazing because Cindy was actually able to come as well. So the whole family went together, and that was his
Mm.
last move. Um, and it was crazy because it was like I don't know, it was probably 6 miles, and it was through this and through that, and it
Wow.
was just a crazy deal, and he was so happy, and he had so much fun, and man, you can see now it was not very long after you could just start to see that he like that was his. It was like he almost knew that that was his last
Yep.
time or something. I don't know. It's so hard to know. Sometimes we look to reach for some of these things, or if they're if that was conscious to him, or if it was just joy. You know,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, after that, he was fine. But you could just tell the end was coming. Now that I look back,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so
Wow. And the nice thing about something like that is you don't really need to know, is it this massive
mhm.
symbol? Is it
Yeah,
something
right.
he was consciously aware of? Like,
Hmm.
how cool that he got to live, you know, to his fullest in his passion,
Yeah,
at that time with the
yeah,
whole family, which was
right.
like his dedication,
Yeah,
to the
totally.
family. Like,
Hmm.
that was his,
Hmm.
like that moment was his, um, everything he could have wanted.
Hmm.
Right. And who knows how this stuff is orchestrated, but like it's pretty beautiful sometimes that way, right?
Hmm.
And we
Yeah,
don't
totally.
know, but it's
Right.
like, yeah, how
Yeah.
those moments come together, that it's like, yeah, like that was just what was needed.
Right. Right.
Right, even as the moment where you saw him off the deck and went, that
Hmm.
was needed as well.
Hmm.
Right? And
Hmm.
that led you down the path to being able to be there with so much presence for
Hmm.
him,
Yeah.
when he did go from this
Hmm.
world. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. I think yeah, the those are probably the two biggest things that to this point that I feel like I've kind of gleaned from it, and it's the one is not to take a moment for granted.
Yeah.
Like don't take a moment for granted, and stop and be there with them,
Yeah.
and in every way, I guess. um,
Yeah.
and then the other moment was just to be able to really be there and listen for when it was the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably everybody's biggest challenge, is to know that I think when we get quiet and we stop focusing on how sad it's going to make us feel,
Mhm.
but that we can process through that. But what do they need? And is that not the whole style of horsemanship that we try to abide by? Is just this whole concept of, what do you need? Like, how can I get you what you need?
Yeah.
And maybe this is just a whole other side to that, of being quiet
Mm.
enough to hear, and then do what needs to happen, do what they need. And in this scenario, it even seems from all the other animals as well that it was very clearly
Yeah.
what was needed, and everyone was okay with it.
Yeah.
um never really thought of it that way, but
Well, your big word is relational,
hmm.
right? And the process that came together was relational, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, horses, dogs, humans, we all, what do we want more than anything, right?
Hmm.
It's like
Right.
we want connection. We want to be
Hmm.
seen, right? Like,
Hmm.
and we want to know that we're heard. And
Hmm.
what a beautiful thing to offer all of the animals, right? Not just the ones that passed, but I think, so many people get so scared of having, say, their horses come into the pasture after a horse has passed.
Hmm.
Don't be. It's
Hmm.
a part of the process.
Hmm.
It's a relational space where they get to be seen
Hmm.
as, you know, the animals, the connected, community-minded animals that they are, and it allows a completion of the circle,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah,
you
I
probably
agree with
saw
you.
that there, right? Like
Mhm.
they do their work, like your one horse coming back, touching in, going
Mhm.
away, coming back, touching
Mhm.
in, going away, and then
Mhm.
the other ones have their way of
Mhm.
being in that space,
Mhm.
doing what they need to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a really good point, is how important it is for them to get their closure as well. Because death is so awkward or challenging for us. But for animals, it does appear that what they need in that, and there's that word again, but it's like the other horses need is just to be able to have closure, and it
Yep,
does seem to come through some kind of contact, some kind of sniffing. That's what when we brought the other dogs up when we
yep,
when we put Jake down, and they were there and they got to kind of feel him, and it was all they needed in
yeah.
the
It's so
craziest way. They just
fast
needed
too.
that. Yep, they
Yep,
just needed that closure. Um, and I have observed a lot of struggles in a lot of horses. I've seen this in babies actually.
yep,
If a mare dies or something, or a baby dies, but they don't get to have that closure,
yep,
it leaves long-term struggles in them that
yep.
I've seen even in how they handle training, because they just almost get caught in those states. So it's really an important thing, I think, to allow
Mm.
their community to feel that closure and allow them to lay there. And I think some people would maybe think that it seems
Morbid.
wrong
Yeah,
somehow, right?
yeah,
To let that happen, but that's very natural. And I think it's the same for us in some level, that I think that's one of the biggest struggles. I've noticed that struggle for people right now, um, just through the whole COVID experience, where vets, if you had to deal with your animal, you had to drop them off at the door,
yeah,
and that was one of the options that was given in to a friend of ours. And I thought, man, that's a real challenge, because that doesn't allow the process
yeah,
to, it's like there's a part of you that doesn't know them dead, that you just know them alive, like you only know, so
yeah,
I think it's that in itself is would be the same as the horses,
yep.
where the horse is just taken away and they only see them alive. So I think that's a process that needs to be worked through for sure for some
Mm,
people. And
mm.
hmm,
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there, and
yeah.
around trauma and
Hmm.
around just completing that cycle comes up in so many pieces. I
Right.
think in humans, vastly,
Hmm.
because our ability to complete trauma cycles
Mm.
is so sort of interjected by our sort of societal, I need to act in a certain way, I need to be in a
Hmm.
certain way.
Right.
I think it's just extremely uh helpful. Like, I really want to, I know this is, you'll probably be like, but I just want to go, thank you, Josh, for
Mm.
being here and expressing your emotion as a
Mm.
man on this
Mm.
podcast, because I think just giving that permission to, like,
Mm.
we need to move that energy,
Mhm.
or else where does it go
Yeah.
in us? Where does it go in us? Like, it's not meant to sit there. It's
Yeah.
meant to it's meant to move.
Mhm.
And when we're under, yeah, so much societal cultural pressure to just hold it all together,
Mhm.
it's so harmful
Mhm.
on so many levels,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. Like, I'm sure, and I haven't asked you this, I don't know if the kids were there, I don't know how
Mhm.
that all worked.
Mhm.
And some people kind of get into this, oh, I can't, I can't have the kids there, or what if they
Mhm.
see this?
Mhm.
um and from my experience around this, I've seen that for them too,
Mhm.
there's a closure. There's a
Mhm.
closure that comes to see and be present,
Yeah.
even though we want to protect them and shelter them
Mhm.
from that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What we did is, we gave them the choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
We wanted them to, so my daughter was avid that she wanted to be there. She
Yep.
wanted to be through the whole process. And Christopher was there with Zoo,
Yeah.
and my son Jackson, my biological son, he wanted to say goodbye to Jake, but he didn't want to be there at the time. So
Yep.
what we did is we just tried to respect what they felt they were up for.
Absolutely.
But Taylor wanted to be a part of the just every single step. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so
Wow.
that was we feel from our perspective that it's really important because, like, again, I think it's no different, is that there's a closure, and from a uh, the ranching kind of lifestyle, there's lots of life, and then there's
Yep.
lots of death, and
Yep.
it happens, right? It does happen, and I also feel like when you have a reverence for death, you also have a reverence for life, and there's always a desire to try to bring life into the world. Um, and for Cindy and I and our family, the sense of being a part of death is what brings kind of the yin and yang to the balance of it all. So there's just a deep
Mm.
appreciation for life's formation, and also death's release. And as much as we desire life, we have to be ready to handle death. I
Yeah.
think it's there are different emotions and different feelings for sure, but they're both necessary to find balance in. So yeah, we're just doing our best to
Mm.
try to find ways the kids can be in those moments, how they can handle that, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, each being a
That's,
bit different.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way of doing it, though.
Hmm.
Just offer up a choice,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Real.
whatever they can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. And yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to talk about on this subject. I feel like we've covered a lot of territory today
Mhm.
and not a ton of time. And I feel like your words have done a lot of honoring of these beautiful beings that are now,
Mhm.
free
Mhm.
and doing their thing. Yeah, I've had some profound experiences with death
Mm.
and and helped a lot of people and animals. Well,
Mm.
people with their animals passing.
Mm.
But what I think resounds is that when we can do it in a way that has presence and love
Mhm.
and a sense of what do they need at the
Mhm.
forefront, it always goes well.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
always there's always this sense they message me and go, I can't believe it. It was so peaceful.
Mm.
It was almost sacred, they
Mhm.
say.
Mhm.
And I think that that's when we can come to terms with this, when we can really I think there's a reckoning with our own mortality that
Mhm.
comes along with
Mhm.
this, right?
Mhm.
Because whenever we are faced with death, we are faced with our own death,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Which inspires you to live,
Which inspires you,
Yeah.
hopefully, to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right. Just to
right.
embrace the moment. And it takes me back. You were talking a little earlier just about, as a man, and being able to share my emotions. I feel like it's always a challenge every time that emotions come. I think that in a world where that's a question for men as to what does that mean. I just feel, there's a this need for strength to be changed in its definition from being tough to being able to be true and be in the moment and create okayness with the moment, and by embracing the vulnerability of whatever that is, just to be in it. um
Mm,
because you're right, energy can't be created or destroyed, it's going to go somewhere.
yep.
And for so many people, and we see it with horses too, that we pent up and then we explode, and we pent up and we explode, and this does no service to anybody. So anytime you feel that that's happening, then we have to restructure a thinking pattern to allow the energy to move. And that's one of the
Mhm.
most beautiful ways to be able to sense when we're in alignment, is that there is a sense of calmness and not a pent upness. um, and I feel like I, you know when we were talking about whether or not we were going to go here or not, the thought came to my mind of, what's most necessary, and I would say that in our relationship and our friendship, that this was probably exactly why this we booked this time today without knowing when we booked it, why that was gonna,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't know yesterday what's gonna happen. I didn't know until, you know, kind of a last minute thing. But anyways,
Mm.
then the question is, okay, well, what does it mean to be strong in this moment, or to,
Yeah.
to show up in a powerful way, as you know anyways, and that's to just be as real as possible.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
hope that's inspiring to somebody.
I have a feeling it will be, and I know one of the questions I often ask is, what is the thing that takes most courage? When I
Right.
think about strength,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take a heck of a lot of courage to bottle it up and
Mm-hmm. Right.
wall up
Mm-hmm.
and shove it down.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a hell of a lot of courage to open up and be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable and speak your
Mm-hmm.
truth
Mm-hmm.
in all its realness,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? And that to me is strength,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Right.
True strength.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Yeah. To be in what is real in the moment without hiding from it or shrinking back. Hey. It's kind of neat to just uh, just proud of my family too, as everybody did what they needed to do. And
Mhm.
it's kind of an interesting thing for Cindy and I, because that was Cindy's mare. Cindy's mare was, and in one moment we were right there with her, and
Yeah.
then in the next moment it turned around to, being with me and Jake. And there was a time where Cindy, we were just trying to kind of have a chill morning a little bit more and be outside and talking back and forth about it. But it was kind of this interesting dynamic of like, I don't know if I'm supposed to process myself or hold space for you. And I was thinking the same thing, is like so compressed, right? Like, because it was pretty deep relational bonds for both of us, or connections for Cindy with her mare and me with Jake. And anyways, but
Mm.
just trust in the moment. And one moment we were, yeah, kind of letting Cindy do what she needed, and then in the next moment trying to support me. But I feel like that's the next thing, is not trying to inhibit or try to make somebody, like, it's okay, it's okay. It's no, it's actually not okay, and and that's okay.
Yeah.
Just feel it.
It's okay to be in the suckiness
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it all
yeah,
too,
totally. Because you need to.
right? You
Because if you
gotta,
don't, then again you start bottling that stuff up, and then pretty
yeah,
soon it's coming out where it doesn't need to come out, and you're spewing that on someone who had nothing to do with it.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the things that I really found when I was sort of like in the pocket, so to speak, I was
Hmm.
like really, listening to my animals and finding timing, and is that everything just the people that needed to be there showed up. The ways that they needed to hold space were perfect.
Hmm.
Like I even remember when we were burying Kia in the backyard here, and I had like four or five of my best friends
Mm,
and my mother, and because that's how Kia wanted it. She was very
mm,
specific about
mm,
what
mm.
was necessary,
Okay.
and the vet and everything. It
Mhm,
was very planned out, and but I remember we were all like in the backyard, and it went from this deep, like kind of heavy,
mm, mhm,
all cry, like lots of density, and then and then her body was there, and there was this lightness that came in,
mhm,
and we took her out to the backyard, and we were all standing around, and we started just like telling funny
mhm,
stories about what had happened with Kia, and all, we all started giggling about, these things that we'd gone through with her. And I just remember the wind came, like all of a sudden out of nowhere, the wind just came out. And
mm,
I was like, oh, we got to bury Kia. Like she's
mm.
definitely telling
Right,
us like it's time.
get
It
with it.
was this really interesting experience of like being
Mm,
bossed around
right,
by the
right.
ethers, because she was so bossy, right? She was like me, total fire dog,
Mhm.
and that would have been exactly how, come on now, like
Yeah,
get on with it.
yeah.
And we all went, oh, okay, like gotta do this thing. And I just remember that feeling of like,
Mm,
go this roller coaster of like in one moment we can just be so deep in our grief, and then the next we can be having a giggle, and the next we
Mhm.
can be in awe of this like
Mhm.
magical experience around
Mhm.
us of this like bigger picture,
Mhm.
and that all these things can happen within the blink of an eye,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just it can be, I said that earlier, but such a sacred process it can
Mhm.
be,
Yeah.
because death is sacred,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, it's interesting, I think, because we don't want it. We want birth.
Yeah,
So we have such sacredness and, preparation for birth and, with so much excitement. And then yet it seems like, yeah, with death, all it is a resistance because we resist that process so much. But I think, yeah, it's also a place where it needs to be honored just as much or in a
yeah,
different way, but with just as much intention, I guess. I
yeah.
don't know how to say that, but there's more of a feeling, I guess.
Mm,
Yeah, it's important.
it is important. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Wow, this has been a conversation.
Wow, totally.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I hope that you've all stayed with us through this all.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have to admit, I was not. I was, I told you earlier there that I was thinking, oh, should we do it? And then I know I said I felt a lot of peace about it, but I really didn't think we were going to just go here.
Yeah,
I thought that, um, yeah, we would talk about other things, but it would just be, anyways. It's just so cool how that worked out, right?
it
That
sure did.
this is an area where you share where you have a level of expertise in regards to this whole process, writing your book and having so much to offer there, and then just seems quite serendipitous.
It sure does. Yeah. Yeah, it's good to see you smile too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's actually kind of the perfect spot to close here.
You bet.
That's our word for today.
Hmm.
Yeah, and just with much gratitude in my heart for a conversation that I've been really wanting to have,
Mm.
um, and I feel so passionately about, which is
Mhm.
weird and morbid. I know
Mm.
everybody, but for some reason, this is the call for this lifetime
Mhm.
for me,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I just, yeah, I so appreciate you being willing to go there with me.
Well, thank you for holding space and for being willing to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's an honor, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, and I'm sending like all the good vibes for
Hmm.
ease and everything there on the land and with your
Yeah.
family and
Thank you.
yeah, with all the animals.
Hmm.
It feels peaceful,
Mhm.
and I like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I feel even more peaceful after processing this out.
I think a few other pieces like fell into place there,
Mhm.
which is such a nice
Mhm.
sense of like,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
integration. And we talked about before the call, one of the things that I work with often is this idea of legacy, and I
Mhm.
think I'd love to just close with that,
Mhm.
because I think we sometimes in our grief and our own sense of loss we forget um, to really honor the contribution of these
Mhm.
animals. And one of the things I love to do is I sit down and I journal, what are all the
Mm.
things this animal has taught me about
Mhm.
life and
Mm.
and cattle and whatever
Mhm.
it is,
Mhm.
right? Um,
Mm.
it's and just recognizing what their role on your path has been.
Mhm. Hmm.
It can be powerful and difficult.
Mhm.
And it might look like, I was saying to Josh, it might look like finding that beautiful photo of that animal and
Mhm.
having it blown up and framed or maybe
Mhm.
painted,
Mhm.
maybe a poem or some, contributions in other ways that feel right. But
Mhm.
that way of going, yeah, that animal meant so much to me,
Mhm.
and they'll always be with me in my heart,
Mhm.
and and really honoring that contribution.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to think through that because I like that idea. I'll pick. There's a certain picture of him that comes to mind right away.
Yeah.
That was taken at a branding when he's just sitting there watching, and
Beautiful.
he's very grayed, and he has that old, just wise look.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some thought into that for sure.
Awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And I know most people know how to get in touch with you, Josh, but what's the best way at this point?
Yeah, through my website's probably the best place. We're joshnichol.com. I have a membership site where I just trying
Hmm.
to offer people access to my work. That they can get involved in a couple different levels and understand what I'm doing and access it whenever they want. Um, Also
Totally.
trying to build our YouTube channel. That's a way you can look at some of my content, and then try to be present on Facebook to be able to continue growing this community. That's a big piece to me, is just trying to establish community. A lot of times people feel kind of alone,
Yep.
and
Yep.
one of my goals has been to create a global opportunity for people that are seeking relationships and relationships with horses. And that's been the biggest factor, I think, is just
Mm.
to try to create and hold space for whatever is happening. And yeah, so those are the couple of the different avenues that people
Fantastic.
can find me online. And then obviously we have our clinic schedule, and that can also be seen on my website.
Amazing. Yes. 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 Well, thank you for the great work you do in the world, Josh. And as always, such a pleasure to speak with you today.
Well, that's mutual.
Aw.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody, for listening in. I really hope, like me, you learned a few things today, and yeah, take care of your hearts after this conversation. It was a big one, and I know a lot of us have moved through this grief as
Yeah.
horse people and dog people and cat people and
Hmm.
whatever we are. So, yeah, take good care. Reach out if you need, and yeah, I will see you for the next podcast. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us today for a very impactful and emotional episode. I know this is a hard topic for us, but I do believe it's an incredible one to speak about and discuss and bring into the open. And I'm so excited to share that Josh will be one of the guest instructors for our live webinars for the Whole Horse Apprenticeship again this year, joined by Jane Pike, Carrie Lake, and others. And also with pre-recorded webinars from Alicia Edwards, Susan Tenney, Christina Klein, and so many more. I really hope you decide to join us for this amazing course. Every year it gets better. It's a 6-month immersion into equine wellness, and it begins September 15th. And you can learn more at alexalinton.com/apprenticeship-2021. I hope I see you there. Bye for now.